Oh, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today, man.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm a new follower. I saw your content. Jeffrey posted one of your lifting videos, and he shared it to his story. And he just said, "If you think I work hard, check out this guy." And I'm just blown away by how much effort you put into the gym, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the same could really be said for to be fair. So, yeah, I mean, I've been doing it a long, long time, and it's something that I love, and I think that does make its way through into the actual work.
Cool, man. And I noticed that you did have a couple YouTube channels that I was going through, but you kind of stopped posting content. It seems to be like mostly everything's on IG now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much the case. I mean, I had like a powerlifting YouTube channel that I was very active on. Maybe I started years ago, but I don't compete in powerlifting anymore, and probably will never compete in powerlifting again. So that's something that I've sort of phased out of doing as far as making YouTube content, especially for powerlifting, when it's just not something I'm super involved in anymore. Outside of like 1 to 2 coaching clients that I work with, I don't even work with anybody anymore that does it. So
Because I watched like the last video that you posted to your, or I think it was like the third last, where you kind of gave it a like an update of what your goals were. How was that changed? So now is it mostly just bodybuilding that you're interested in?
I mean, for me, like it's really always about the training, and then the specific sport attached to it really just gives it some sort of objective direction and
Mm.
sort of like a measuring stick that I can actually use to say, okay, I'm making progress towards a goal or not. So yeah, right now I would say I am training for competitive bodybuilding, but the training is always what comes first, and it's just that is the point of the training now is to really focus more so on getting bigger.
Hmm. Okay, cool, man. And you, how long? Because you posted some stuff where you kind of showed like your peak natural physique versus your peak enhanced physique, and you've been training like you as a natural. Um, you attained an amazing physique, and I'm just wondering, like, how long was it that got you to that point, and then when did you get on PEDs, and how that kind of all went along?
So I mean, it depends on what you want to count as like training, but I've been I've
Yeah,
been
fair enough.
stealing my mom's 20-pound dumbbells to do like curls since I was like 12, you know. But as far as like serious training with barbells where there's a structured routine and it wasn't once every 3 weeks I would do it and then skip 2 weeks. I started with like structured, consistent training in 2009. And then probably the absolute peak of my natural physique would have been 2017, 2018. So almost 10 years later.
Oh wow, crazy. And like, and in total, you've been lifting for how long?
Well, let's see. If you count, like, again, we say like
Consistent, yeah.
2009, it's almost the end of 2022 now. So it's, if you like actually like go month by month, it's probably like 13 and a half years. I usually just round up and say 15. It's cooler, but it's like 13 going on years.
Crazy, man. And as far as, because you kind of do the power building thing, or that's at least what you kind of promoted on your website and stuff, from what I gathered, or on your YouTube channel. Um, what is the definition of power building exactly? Just someone who does like powerlifting and bodybuilding together? Because there's a few people define it a little differently, like getting strong and big at the same time. But I'm just kind of wondering what your definition of that is.
So I want to kind of like first switched away from powerlifting training. I did initially like seek to do power building, which in the way that I was using the word at the time was yes, like literally trying to do both. So still improving my 1 rep maxes on stuff like squat, bench, deadlift, but also at the same time trying to get bigger as well. So I mean, I think when you actually use the word power building, it doesn't have a clear objective meaning for like universally, because a lot of people when they say that they just mean they're a power lifter and then they do some like accessories for higher reps out.
Yeah, yeah.
But to me that's just powerlifting, right? Or somebody might call themselves a power builder because they do squat, bench, and deadlift in their bodybuilding training, but they really never go below like 6 to 8 reps. And to me, that's just bodybuilding. Like that's power building. So I think like when I use it, if it's really a word that means anything, it's somebody that's actively attempting to do a bit of both. So we're talking about somebody that spends some time in like the 1 to 3 rep range on major barbell compounds, but also maybe spends time in the training year explicitly training for physique purposes. So not just put, because even a power lifter in their off season will try to put on muscle to improve their total. But what I'm talking about is somebody who's like, doing specific exercises for their calves and their side delts and they're improve their biceps. So it's not all as a means to an end for improving powerlifting performance. For now, I would say is that I'm just doing bodybuilding, but I tend to go pretty heavy. I tend to do a lot of stuff like in the 5 rep range with compound still. But again, like for me, I would just say that's just bodybuilding. It's not necessarily power building. So I would say I no longer do power building because I probably haven't intentionally done a set below like 5 to 6 reps in like 3 years, maybe 4.
Is there a reason for that in particular? Just because that's not your goal anymore? Is there like a specific reason? Like, does it affect your hypertrophy training if you go too low in reps?
It does. So the best way I think to describe it is like if you're doing something like a 1 rep max, it's not only going to contribute less to hypertrophy than a higher rep set. And the reason for that is one of the models that we use is effective reps. So talking about the last 5 reps of a set that's done to failure, those are the reps that tend to get the mechanical tension and eventually cause hypertrophy in the long run. So when you're doing a 1 rep set or a 1 rep max, obviously you're going to get 1 rep that's highly effective, that has a ton of mechanical tension, but it's just 1 rep.
Yeah.
Compared to a set of 5, 6, 7, 8 or more, where you might have 5 or 6 effective reps. But at the same time, it's going to have either the same fatigue cost or even more, because now we're talking about like lifting something close to a 1 rep max is extremely fatiguing.
Yeah.
Like a neural perspective. And it's not going to provide as much hypertrophy as something that would be less like an 8 rep set. So there is a direct conflict there, because if you kind of imagine like your recovery ability as a cup, you can only put so much in the cup. And if you're putting in a ton of heavy work, like let's say like in the 1 to 3 rep range, you're filling that cup up more and getting less hypertrophy out of it. So it's a direct conflict between the maximal end of strength training and hypertrophy training.
No, that makes sense, man. And I'm someone who's mostly into bodybuilding. And you're someone who's really strong. So like someone for you, especially in your case, your 1 rep max on a Romanian deadlift is probably just insane. Like maybe if someone's a little bit weaker, they don't really, I guess as you get stronger, a 1 rep max just takes a way more recovery. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the case. And also you start we'll start really worrying about like injury risks.
Yeah.
You're, newer to it or not as strong as compared to what you could be versus your genetic potential. I mean, we all know like high school kids, like they max out their bench every time they go in.
Yeah.
Most of them are just fine. Like they don't get like any serious injuries or anything. If I was to go in and max out on bench 3 times a week, I'm blowing a pec within 2 weeks. That's like not an option. I literally can't do that and survive.
Mm-hmm. And you've had quite a few. It seems like you've had a few little injuries here and there. I guess nothing serious over the last little bit. Or you had like a pec tweak or something like that you're working through?
It's really a common thing that I'm realizing is like a gap in sort of like my knowledge base at this point, is because when I was natural, this is just not something that happened. But now I've gotten to a point where I'm strong enough on select movements where like I'm starting to brush up against the limits of like what the connective tissue can handle, or like I need to be completely on.
Oh, holy fuck.
Like
Yeah.
ability. Otherwise, I get overuse injuries much more easily, like elbow tendonitis or tendonitis in my knees, and it's really like not something that I had to think about, but now it's a huge consideration in my training. Like I'll do all sorts of stuff to purposely harder with less weight.
No, I've heard that from people saying, your muscles get stronger, but the connective tissue doesn't really keep up when you're enhanced. I don't know much about that, what the actual science behind that is.
That's
But
100% accurate. Yes. So like when we're talking specifically about AAS, like anabolic and androgenic steroids, they are very, very good at increasing the rate at which you accrue muscle protein, but
Mhm.
they don't do anything really for tendons and ligaments because it's not the same structural fat. We're not talking about adding proteins there. So there
Mhm.
are things, like human growth hormone, which can increase collagen production, but that's a super slow process, and it's just nowhere near as powerful as what steroids do for muscles. I mean, if it was, it'd probably be a bad thing. I mean, you don't really want your structures like bones and ligaments to grow that much. That would be a huge problem.
Mm. And when you were natural, you never had any of those kinds of problems? I mean, like everyone gets a little, like I've gotten strains, but there's a difference between like ripping the hamstring off the bone and getting a little like back tweak or something like that. Did that happen as a natural?
So I did, but like oftentimes, like I don't want to say like I deserved it, but I was doing something where it was predictable. So like if I went and ran like the Smolov squat program or something, at the end of that, my knees might be letting me know. But at the same time, like all I had to do to prevent that was squat a reasonable amount of times per week instead of trying to do some crazy high volume program that squats 4 times a week, all close to failure. It's like, okay, well, maybe you could have predicted that would have been problematic for your knees. Now it's like, okay, I can do legs every fifth day and do literally 3 sets. And if I'm not careful about movement execution and even movement selection, I'll end up with achy knees in 2 weeks.
Shit, man.
And that becomes like a self-limiting problem for progress, which is super weird because it's like when I was natural, it was all about like pretty much doing whatever it took to actually get the programming to work and add more strength. And that with what I'm doing now is almost like a given that I'll get stronger as long as I don't get hurt.
Mhm. So you would, how would you, I guess how to phrase this question? Like there is a difference between natural and enhanced training. Would you agree? Is it
I,
as, sorry, is the contrast as great as some people make it out to be? Because a lot of naturals will say stuff like, hey, if you're natural, this won't work for you. Or people who are enhanced train differently. So don't even listen to people that are enhanced. I'm kind of in the middle there. Like, I think obviously there's some truth to it, but I'm just wondering what you think of how, how crazy is that difference?
so there's some huge, like there's at least like one huge confounding variable in there. So it's almost like this, right? Like imagine that somebody was a complete beginner and they told you like, hey man, I don't even bench press. I just do push-ups. And guess what? I just did push-ups every day for 3 months and my bench press went up 25 pounds. You're like, well, you have a 100-pound bench press. Like anything could have brought your bench press up. When you're on enough drugs, we'll just be real, like you can do really stupid stuff and still make progress like you're a beginner. So the
Mm,
problem of people who never really trained seriously naturally, or maybe they just don't remember what they did when they were natural because like they got enhanced when they were like 19 or whatever, right? And they only make progress when they're on drugs, and they have
mhm,
no program to make progress without it. So that's a problem with listening to some of those people because their programming never worked in the first place. But like, let's say you take your average natural trainee who has figured out how to program from themselves and get stronger, and you
mm,
add that, it literally just makes it work better. Like it makes it work significantly better. But if you take like programming that's stupid and you add drugs to it, it still works, but not as well. And that's where I'll see these situations where there's somebody literally on 10 times as much drugs as somebody who actually knows what they're doing and making worse progress. Or even in crazy in certain scenarios, you actually see people, it happens all the time, like elite naturals that are way better. They're bigger, they're stronger than mediocre
mm,
people on drugs. And it's because they don't know what they're doing. So that there is that element to it that's absolutely true, where it's like it's not because there's necessarily a difference in enhanced and natural training at that level. It's because these people don't actually know how to train and they just rely on drugs. And
Mm.
there's sort of a similar thing that happens sometimes with natural training, where you have somebody has like super elite genetics, like just literally like top 0.01%, and everything they do works. And sometimes those people will promote ridiculous stuff too. Like how are you like don't know what you're talking about? Well, drugs make that same thing happen, but it's way more common because anyone can take drugs. Not anyone can be born with like NFL genetics or something.
No, that all makes sense. Um, what would you say to people? Because like most of the people that listen to this podcast are natural, and they're mostly I interview natural people. You're someone I wanted to have on because you clearly put in the fucking work. Like your natural physique is way like the natural physique that you had is clearly like you put in a solid decade of hard work. And I'm kind of wondering, if someone's, in the intermediate phase and they're just trying to get as big as fucking possible as a natural, what are kind of your main points or main advice to give them?
I think the biggest thing that I've seen over and over again is that people are looking for like these big macro changes that's going to give them like a 50% boost overnight.
Mm.
Here's the problem with that. There, every once in a blue moon, you find something like that, right? Where like there's this one change that you make, and all of a sudden it just accelerates the process for you so much. But the vast majority of the time, you need to be looking for like these small 1% improvements and just accumulating as many of those as possible. So it's like whenever you stall on an exercise or a movement, make the smallest change that you can to keep the progression going a little bit longer. Too many people get caught in this intermediate purgatory where it's like they just jump from all these wildly different lifting philosophies, trying them all one after the other, and they just end up spinning their wheels because they're trying to make these huge changes rather than making these small little changes, almost like you want your training system to evolve over time instead of revolutionizing it every 4 months. You feel like you've stalled. So that's the biggest thing for me, is that if I could go back and redo that period for myself, I would focus on the fundamentals and stop making such big changes. Like, okay, you want to talk about completely changing your programming? Are you need 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night, or whatever you personally need? Because sleep needs vary. Like some people can sleep 6 hours and feel completely recovered. Other people need 10. So, but are you nailing the basics, right? Are you getting enough protein? Like, do you have any idea how much food you're eating on a daily basis? Is your life super super stressful? Is there any way you can bring that down? You know what I mean? It's just like nail those basics, and then as little challenges come up, make the smallest change that you can to keep things moving in the right direction. And over time, you'll sort of have this individualized approach that works for you versus like just jumping from 12 different cookie cutter programs every 4 months, hoping that one of them is finally going to be the magic one that takes your progress up this next level. And it just never does. Like just like, yeah, we hear like these stories of like someone that found the thing that worked for them and it changed overnight. But more often than not, that's not the problem. You just need to realize it takes a lot longer than you thought. Be patient, nail the basics, and make these small little changes and just keep it rolling. Because it's corny to hear at this point, but like if you to add 10 pounds of muscle in a year, that's a huge amount, but that's less than 1 pound a month. That's less than a quarter pound a week. How much do you really think is changing on a 2 to 3 month basis? I mean, we're talking about a great result would in a 3 month time period would be like 2.5 pounds of muscle, 1 kilo, right? How much do you think your lifts and your performance in the gym is really going to change if you gained 2 pounds of muscle? You're probably not gaining hundreds of pounds on there. You know what I mean? It's just like, accept that if you're making slow, steady progress, it's probably as good as it gets, and you just need to be patient and keep doing that for a really long time.
Mm-hmm. What as far as like beating the logbook, because you train super hard, and I'm wondering like, is that because of where you're at now, just as a very advanced lifter, or versus like how should a natural who's maybe in the intermediate phase, like the guy we're kind of talking to with that advice you just gave, how hard should he be training? I know that's kind of a loaded question, but like there's a tendency for some people to train. I know a lot of people don't train hard, but then there's some people who like will go to failure on every fucking lift. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So I think we have to separate the concepts of training hard from its qualitative and quantitative. So we're talking about like hard training from a quantitative aspect. That's where we're talking about like how many reps are you leaving in the tank? How many sets are you doing? How many times per week are you training? And all of that stuff is important, but it's not as the qualitative aspect. How much attention are you giving to each rep in the set? How present are you during the set? Are you like looking over at the chick doing hip thrusts in the middle of your squat set? Or are you focused on your technique? Are you actually thinking? Do you have time to be in your like? Are you thinking about like, am I doing this right? Because if you're having thoughts like that during your set, you could be getting to a much deeper level and getting more out of yourself. And so I think there's an element to hard work that isn't necessarily like rah, take everything to failure, right? Like imagine any other sport. Like let's say someone's learning a new technique in football, basketball, golf, whatever. There's going to be a time period when they're first learning that where they do that super slow and have a high amount of focus on the new motor pattern that they're learning. And they're definitely not like screaming and yelling and going to failure, flailing around. So in terms of working hard from the qualitative aspect, I don't think there's a limit. The deeper you can go, the more focus you can get, the more concentration you can have to do the task that you're doing as well as you can do it, whether that's a failure set or even a set where you're just warming up. Accomplish the goal of what you're doing as well as you possibly can. So I don't think you can go too far on the qualitative aspect. Whereas on the quantitative aspect, there's very clearly too far. And it's you can tell when you're going too far because you're not going to make good progress and you'll even go backwards. Like when you're doing too much and you're under recovering, you'll be beat up in the next session. And oftentimes you won't be able to match your performance from last time. And that's because you just flat out did too much from the quantitative aspect. So I think people have to separate those two things, like working hard from the perspective of like how much are you doing. Don't get too caught up on that. You need to like whatever works is what works. Like I'm at a point in my training where I think it would make like a lot of people uncomfortable how little volume that I do. Like I will do 3 sets for chest every week. And way too little, but it's not for me at this point in time. There was a time where I did 20 plus sets a week. But was I working harder when I was doing 20 sets? Not necessarily from the qualitative aspect. From the qualitative aspect now, I work way harder because I have another multiple years of learning how to get focused, learning how to get intense, learning how to get my arousal levels higher as needed. So separate those two concepts and realize that like from the perspective of the quality that you're bringing, there's no such thing as working too hard. You could in fact you're like you've never maxed that out. There's always another level that you can get to. There's always a higher level of focus, more concentration, more intensity on the right things. And then from the quantitative aspect, you just need to figure out how much to do at that given moment in time to produce progress. So to me, that's like, don't get too tied up in like how much you're doing is how hard you're working. Like do the right thing for your progress at the time and do it as well as you can. And that's true hard work.
That's great advice, man. That's crazy. One thing that makes me think about is you brought up like the term focus, and like I feel like in the gym, a lot of people, I'm bad for this too. I'll have my music in and stuff like that, and sometimes we'll be like switching the song. But like when I'm in my set, I'm like working hard. But I was even thinking the other day to myself, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't even bring music into the gym, or to kind of you're going to be listening to music either way because the gym's always playing music. But what are some things you do like just at the gym to be like in a very focused kind of flow state?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, it starts from like before I get in my car and drive to the gym. So like, I am admittedly like probably a bit on the OCD kind of side of things. But I have like the exact same pre-workout meal every single time. I'll watch certain videos while I'm eating that meal, whether it's like I kind of anime guy, so some maybe I'll be watching like an anime that I find motivational, or I also really love sports, so it could be like listening to some sort of sportsman or sportswoman that I find extremely motivating. And then on the ride to the gym, I definitely won't be listening to the radio or having like Spotify pick random songs. I will carefully choose videos on YouTube that either have a song or a message that I know is going to start to prepare me to be in the right mindset before I even get in the gym.
Holy fuck.
When I'm actually doing specific lifts, everything has a ritual. It's literally ritualized. So it's like I put on my wrist wraps in this order, doing it this way, and then my belt. And then if it's like a lift with chalk, then the chalk. And then when I approach the bar, I have like a weird little, almost like if you ever see like a baseball player right before they're about to take a swing at a pitch, they'll like tap their bat a certain way every single time. Or golfers kind of tend to do the same thing. I'll do that before the lift. And I do that every single time. So there's literally like a physical aspect to the ritual as well. And
Mm.
all things help anchor you to the state that you need to be in. This is not just like stuff that's I'm like my opinion. If you read sports psychology textbooks, they will talk about rituals and anchors. And these sort of things can help tie you to specific states of mind, to specific states of emotions. And if you practice getting into that state of mind and getting to those emotions, you can do it easier. It's literally a skill. So music can be absolutely be a huge thing, but it's up to kind of the individual to know how to use that for themselves, right? And there might be certain movements or workouts where you might want to listen to something that has like no words and helps you focus. And there might be other times where you're approaching a lift where you know, okay, there's no technique involved on this particular, or there's little technique involved. I'm doing like a leg extension and the machine is keeping me in a fixed groove. This is really just all about effort. Maybe that sort of ramps you up more. I don't know. Those are little things that everybody has to kind of figure out based on their own personality and quirks. And but that for me, that's what I do is I literally have this whole ritualistic process that starts from my pre-workout meal and what I'm doing during that meal to then in the car ride on the gym. By the time I'm at the gym, half the time I'm already like in a completely different mind state than I would be like walking around the house. And that's before I've even done anything for warm up.
Mm, that's cool, man. I dove into some of your older the YouTube channel that was just your name.
Oh
And
yeah.
you had some like I think the last video was like 3 years ago. That's some older stuff on there. And you get into some like self-development stuff, kind of like shitting on like bullshit self-help books. You have like this one where it's like don't follow your passions and stuff like that. The one thing you talk about is, or sorry, like the one thing that self-help talks about a lot is like meditation and this way to like get into the flow. Maybe that's actually like there's a lot of like bullshit fluffy things out there that don't really like what you just described wasn't fluffy. That seemed like that was a ritual that gets you in the zone. I feel like modern society as a whole is trying to like pull you out of that because it's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to be taken out of the moment. And I think that can actually, maybe that's like an aspect of lifting that people don't address enough, like the mental, like the mental, I don't want to say like mental health, but like maybe mental health slash like just being present. Maybe that's something that gets neglected a little bit because I don't hear people talk about that a lot. You hear like the fluffy self-help gurus talk about meditate and be in the moment. It's always like very it's not very practical. It's not very concrete.
Right. And so I would actually go so far as to say like that is the most important thing at the advanced level is like, can you be present and focused enough to do what you have to do? Because the line, for example, from like if I'm doing RDLs with like 650 pounds, the line between me getting an effective set and me getting hurt is like tipping my balance forward 5 degrees. Like literally, because I actually did get hurt from doing that. like pretty recently. So yeah, the focus is such a huge thing. And the interesting thing about meditation and mindfulness, yes, there's definitely an aspect of like new age self-help that perverts all of that. But there are also elements to this that are like completely legit. For example, there's a book actually called Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi that goes into this aspect specifically for high performance tasks like climbing, sports, lifting, and you can pull ideas from some of these people that are actually doing things in the trenches and then apply it for yourself. And I think that's sort of, no, I don't want to get too far off track, but like that's my biggest problem with self-help stuff in general, is that too often people will read a self-help book, do nothing with it, but then reading the book gives them the feeling like they've accomplished something.
Mm.
It almost like pacifies the need to actually do something, because you can. And I'm not saying that like learning for the sake of learning is a bad thing. Like learning is cool, but when we're talking about like actually accomplishing shit, you have to go do stuff. And ultimately, most people don't need a bunch of techniques for like going and doing stuff. They just need to go do it. They don't like they're just putting it off. Like, right? Like the most effective way to stop procrastinating is probably, I mean, maybe if you want, you can read a book about how to stop procrastinating if you're really struggling with it and you need some ideas. But probably the best and most simplest way is to just do the thing that you're putting off. You didn't need to read a 10-hour or listen to a 10-hour audiobook. You just needed to go do it.
Yeah, no, I fell for that. Like when in my early 20s, I definitely fell for the self-help dopamine hit where you're just listening to these audiobooks going, "Oh yeah, I'm figuring out life and I'm not actually doing shit." It's the same thing as like anybody who started a business. I know you have a business and you can't read about the shit you're going to learn. Like anybody who started a business, once you actually start that business and the problems that arise, that's the shit. That's when you're going to learn. Like, sure, you can read a book of basics of business and whatever, but like, unless you're in the trenches, it's even with training. It's like, you can go get advice from your favorite YouTuber or read a book on training, but you're not going to actually learn about how you can handle certain things or how you're going to respond and what lessons you need to learn until you're actually in the trenches for sure.
100%. I was like the same thing happened to me, and like, well, whether it is business or like some little thing is going to come up, and that's where now it's like useful to acquire information about that little thing, right? Like, I don't know, it could literally be anything. Like, I don't know, some taxing that you need to deal with. Now all of a sudden when you're
Bookkeeping.
yeah, you go into the section in that book and you look up the exact problem and you read about it, solve it. And that took you 45 minutes. And maybe previously you read that whole business book and felt really good about it, but you actually applied like nothing from it. And the same thing with lifting, where it's like, I know people like to take in a lot of information and it kind of gives them cool ideas. But really, when it's going to be most helpful for you is like when you have a super specific question. Like, I'm having, problems with improving my bench press lockout. Like, what are some things that I can do specifically to improve that problem? You're going to find really focused, specific information with a few strategies that you can try and apply immediately and see if it fixes the problem. Whereas, like, a lot of newer lifters, especially in today's day and age, will just try to learn about everything, which is, I mean, when we all get into new stuff, we do that to some degree. There's not really a problem with it. But most of it is not going to mean anything to you at all until you run into these little specific issues and then have to go solve them. And that kind of ties back to what I was saying before, where it's like every time you run into something where you have a minor stall, try to figure out that one small problem rather than like scrapping everything and getting a new program.
Yeah, that's actually one thing. I brought this up on another podcast. One thing that I fell for is when I'm still, I don't know, I'd consider myself a beginner, to be honest with you. I'm someone who, when I get into something, I read as much as I can about it. I'm listening to all the audiobooks. I'm listening to the podcasts, listening to the experts, and then I'm applying things. Like so. Let's take like the big like biomechanics push that was going on for a bit there. So I'm sitting there doing my one arm cable lat pull when I'm still fucking weak as fuck on pull ups. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm doing these stupid fucking converging chest press when my bench is fucking pathetic. So it's like you're skipping a step. Maybe those things are good when you're like at a peak fucking level and you got to hit a muscle a different way. But when you're a beginner, you just have to do fucking, the basics.
Yeah, and it's like, you know what? Like some of this stuff does have merit, but the problem is like when people are discussing it, the context gets lost for most of the listeners. So it's like, is really any of this more important than trying hard? No. Do you need to learn about the best way to isolate your lower lats when you have 2 years of training experience, or even 4 or 5? Probably not. Like, I don't even do that at all. Like, I don't have an exercise in my program for lower lat and upper lat. I do row and pull up variations and some pullovers like everybody else. And I focus on trying to do those like as well as I can and progressively overloading, because we have to sort of like find stuff to talk about. But really, if we're just being honest to everybody, like people know about the 80-20 rule, where like 20% of the things you do are responsible for 80% of the results. In lifting, it's probably more like the 95-5 rule. Overload with good technique and like do the right things out of the gym with like your food and sleep, and that's like it. But like if we only talk about that, and there's not a lot of content to make. But really though, if you're reminding someone, it's like, do you want to get the best results possible? If I was going to try to help someone get the best results possible, I would not be talking to them about iliac pull downs or whatever the biomechanics shit. I would be like, all right, let's get your sleep figured out. Like, create a schedule for yourself that you can stick to. That's probably going to do more for you than any sort of like weird, funky exercise. Like, find a schedule that you can stick to so that you get consistent sleep. Find a diet that you like so that you can stick to that. And then pretty much pick some exercises that you like. They're kind of fun. You enjoy them. They don't hurt you. And now try to get as strong as them on them as you can for like a year straight.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of it is just like entertainment.
Yeah, that's actually something I was thinking about too. These people, you're saying like we're just trying to come up with more things to talk about, but at the end of the day, like half the time when how you like you watch those YouTube videos before you lift and you probably watch like the same videos over and over again. That's kind of what I do with content. It's like I know what I need to be fucking doing, but I just listen to it. I'm like, yeah, that's what I need to be doing. You know what I'm saying? Like you just come back to the same shit. Usually if someone's way out of the lines, I'll be like, okay, well, that's interesting, but I don't know if that's something I need to be worrying about. Like there's every once in a while you see someone who's just like way, way out there, contrarian. But most of the time it's just the fucking basics, man. Sorry, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
I know. I mean, I totally agree. I guess the one thing I will say about that is just keep in mind, and this is kind of a funny thing that happens, but like keep in mind that most content creators are people that for one reason or another are like further along in the process than the people that they're talking to. But usually content creators are also very passionate about what they do. So the problems that they are currently facing and dealing with are going to be like front of mind. So like we were just talking about like for me, like, oh yeah, now I'm worried about like all these different ways to avoid connective tissue injuries. Is that something that anyone needs to consider in their first 5 years of training? Other than the part where I talked about just don't do stuff clearly over the line, like, oh, I'm going to bench press 6 days a week. Like that might give you some sort of pec tendon issues, overuse symptoms. But like the other stuff I'm talking, it's like not even relevant. It's just like what's on my mind because it's like what's important for my progress right now. But 80 to 90% of like people listening to fitness content are in their first 3 years of doing this. And like I always try to remind myself of that before I do any sort of content, because it's easy to get kind of caught up in the more advanced, nuanced discussions that are kind of like more fun. But then they don't realize, because it's like when you talk about it, you're really passionate about it. So then they think it's super important for them too. And it's not like at all. And I always try to be clear about that so that you don't have a situation where like, somebody is not even squatting body weight yet. And they think that they need to, instead of doing squats, only be doing hack squats because some influencer said like hack squats are better at isolating the quads. Okay, that information is not relevant to you yet.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense, man. That makes sense. I think about that too. Like even with my podcast, sometimes I lose track of the fact that, maybe I'm like knowledge wise, I'm a little bit far. I would say like my knowledge base is further ahead than my actual like practical application because I'm talking to people that know more than me. But like some of the shit that we talk about is probably not applicable to like people that are listening to it.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about, as because we've all learned off YouTube and YouTube is valuable. Like everyone's learned from the internet how to get better. Um, but it's just, yeah, that's interesting you brought that up because I think about that too. It's like, yeah, there's some beginner out there who has no fucking idea. Like I wish when I first started lifting, like I was a total fucking idiot in the gym. I didn't know shit. I was doing like CrossFit workouts, trying to like get jacked, had no idea what I was doing. Um, but I wish I just stumbled on someone who was just like putting the basics into like a easily consumable package because it's almost like everyone's just trying to do fucking crazy shit and clickbait shit. But at the end of the day, it's like, I guess that stuff doesn't build a brand if you're just being, if you're just talking about the fundamentals, it's not exciting enough.
And I think we got to figure out a way to like reverse that because I actually think like making progress on like the meat and potato exercises is exciting. Like
Yeah.
I actually think it was like the most exciting thing to me when I started. Like I was probably like more excited when I hit like my first two press than like the stuff I do now. Like I was like a lifetime dream that I had since I was like a kid in high school. And it was the opposite problem when I started. Like you had to like sign up on some sketchy internet forum and listen to like some guy who's had a crazy screen name like Jack Rhino 347 tells you 5x5 squats till you out of your eyes, and you're like, all right, I guess that's what I got to do because there's literally three options, right? It's like House 5x5 starting strength or strong lifts. Those are like the only three programs on the internet for beginners, and now it's completely, absolutely the opposite, where people are inundated with so many options, and it's literally information overload. Like they don't even know what to do. They have no idea who to listen to, like what's real and what's not. But yeah, I don't I don't know if I can bring that back to any sort of value. But like there's got to be a way to kind of encourage people to like, what, the basics are cool, the fundamentals are cool because it's like that's what's actually results. That's what you want. You actually want results, or you just like want to learn about shit.
Mm-hmm. I want to dive into exercise selection a little bit because you brought up something, someone's can't squat their body weight, but then they're doing hack squats because some influencer told them to. I want to dive into that a little bit as far as like, say, do you think a beginner or someone who's in the intermediate phase, like, how do you approach exercise selection? Let's just say, like, for whatever reason, someone either doesn't like an exercise or just it feels kind of fucked up. Like, say they don't like barbell bench, which is a staple movement, and like people will shit on you if you don't do it. But let's just say they get strong as fuck doing dumbbell bench. Like, do you think that's an issue? Like, do you think people should just stick with what feels good for their structure, or do you think they should kind of force themselves to do certain exercises?
I don't see any sense in ever forcing yourself to do an exercise that is causing actual discomfort in like joints and tendons and ligaments ever. But at the same time, there is like a certain exception to that when we're talking about true beginners. So I'm not talking about somebody who's been doing this for like 1 to 3 years. It's already tried to learn squats and bench press and deadlift. They have passable form on like on everything, right? It's like I'm talking about. There's some people who are like, "Oh, I don't like squats," and it's like you've never done a squat. Like no one's ever shown you one time how to do like a below parallel squat with your like heels on the ground. And so we kind of can't forget that sometimes those people exist. Like we're like, and they're listening to that message too. Oh, I don't have to do squats. I don't like those. Well, you've actually like never done them though. When we're talking about people not doing stuff that kind of bothers them, like somebody flat bench bothers their shoulder, but they've already tried it. They've done 6 months to a year of lifting and it didn't feel right even with people saying, hey, your form looks pretty good, and it still didn't feel right. There's absolutely nothing about a flat bench that's fundamentally better than dumbbells. Nothing. So in like situations like that, especially for people that we throw around these words like beginner, intermediate, but if somebody has like any decent amount of training experience, and I've seen their lifts, and I can tell they at least can do it with like decent passable form, and they say that lift, it just doesn't feel good. Get rid of it, unless you're a powerlifter, right? And you have to do specific lifts because you're going to compete in them. But like if you're training to look good, to get bigger muscles, you don't even necessarily have to do free weights. I mean, I think that people should try at the very, very beginning to learn most of the free weight movement patterns, because if you can squat with the bar, you can get on any squat machine and it's like not going to be a problem. But if someone only ever does squat machines to start with, they might get 2 or 3 years into the journey and they might have a much more limited toolbox because they don't know how to move properly. And so in order for them to learn a squat and get anything from it, they have now like a year-long process. Whereas if you put that at the beginning, then the person knows how to move with the most complicated version of the movement, which is like the barbell squat. And now we can put them on a hack squat or a pendulum squat or any other machine squat, and it's not a problem. And they can move back and forth freely because they learned the harder version already. So in those situations, like we're talking about intermediates, early intermediates, advanced beginners, whatever you want to call them, but people that have like done some of the basic programs, they have decent form. At that point, yeah, just pick the stuff that feels good and that you like. And I think that's kind of an underrated aspect. Like you really like dumbbell bench a lot more than flat bench, do dumbbells. Like you're going to train harder and get better results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason I asked that is specifically for me, like I used to have back issues and I have really good, I would say I have really good form on squats. Like to be honest, I go ass to grass. I don't have any butt wink. I don't even know if that really matters, but I have really good looking squat. And I kept just fucking hammering squats, kept having back discomfort. And then I tried some hack squats, leg press, did some like back isolation movements. And eventually I came back to squats and they felt better. Like I don't have any back pain. I fixed all my back pain just through fucking trial and error and just trying to figure out how to strengthen my erectors and making sure everything back there is nice and strong, posterior chain. And now I'm doing squats and they feel hard as fuck and they're like uncomfortable, right? Because when you're doing a heavy back squat, like your core is feeling it, your back's feeling it,
Sure.
your hip. And so it's like to some people, it's like maybe they have like injury history. They're like, oh, this feels uncomfortable. It doesn't feel as good as hack squat. You know, hack squat's very focused on my quads and I don't have to worry about my fucking back. But I feel like that you can kind of be scared away from doing things that feel like they're hard or uncomfortable, but you should be doing that, you know, like even like just even talking about my injury with my back, it was kind of like a weird like chronic thing. Like it wasn't something acute that happened. It was just like my back couldn't really handle like heavy hinges or squats, but actually doing those movements eventually like helped that, even though they felt very uncomfortable at the time. So it's like, yeah, it's like a little like you're dosing it accordingly and it actually kind of solves some of the issues. So maybe if you're, yeah, I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think like anytime that you're dealing with and it doesn't necessarily have to be an injury, but like let's just, if we're talking about it in the context of something that hurts or it doesn't feel right, and we're not talking about like hard, but there's something about it that feels like there's a discomfort that seems like it could be injurious or cause pain later down the road, and we're not just talking about like, oh, this is too hard, right? But like there's something that feels off. In those situations, will regress to something that's easier on that particular issue and eventually come back. So it's always important to remember that with exercise selection, there's a temporal component. So like the best exercise right now might not be the best exercise in 3 months. And the best exercise in 6 months might be come back to the best exercise that's the best now after a period where it wasn't the best anymore. So there's always that aspect to it where if you're working through a specific issue, you can remove something for a while and then bring it back in. Like there's nothing in hypertrophy training that says you have to like settle on certain movements and just use them year round. In fact, I would even argue that's the wrong approach. It's much better to do a larger variety of movements. I mean, you need to keep things in long enough to progressively overload them and make progress. But a larger variety of movements is going to prevent overuse injuries. It's going to strengthen areas that particular other movement didn't strengthen as well. And it will, in the long run, make you more robust and more muscular. Because different movements even target different regions of the muscle potentially and things like that. So there's really no reason, again, to like limit the tools in your toolbox out of some like misguided notion that you have to just stick to things until they break. You know,
Mhm.
if something is hurting, regress, you know, to something that's a little bit easier. So like, you know, for me, if I'm right now, a good example would be like I have some tendonitis in my elbow. So instead of forcing myself to do straight bar squats and get my arm behind me, which tends to aggravate the issue, I'm just doing a training cycle with the safety bar squat, which has, you know, the pad and the handles in front and presents absolutely no mobility challenges for my elbow. And in the meantime, you know, I can work on my shoulder flexibility. And as I lose a little bit of weight, because I'm kind of at the peak end of a bulk, my mobility just gets worse just by being bigger. And when I get leaner after dieting, some of those exercises that I had to pull off the table will be great to bring back in. And again, that's just an aspect of like the temporal component that we're talking about here. Just because something's the best now doesn't mean it'll be the best later, and just because you can't do something now doesn't mean it won't be.
Cool, cool. I want to go into that a little bit because you said, you know, you want to keep a movement in long enough so that you can progressively overload and like max out your strength, or like just for that training block or however you want to do it. From what I've kind of gathered from people I've talked to, and what's worked best for me is I'll take a movement and I'll just beat it into the fucking ground. So say it's dumbbell bench. I'm just doing that month, like 3 months, 5 months, just going to the point where I kind of hit a sticking point where I feel like I'm not progressing. Then it's like, okay, maybe now I'll switch out my horizontal press for a different variation of some kind. Like there's a balance between, you know, switching shit out all the time for no fucking reason and then just religiously sticking to like just a few movements. I'm kind of wondering, how do you program for that? Or
So I will basically use a very similar approach to what you just said, but there's just a couple exceptions. So like if something starts to cause joint, tendon, ligament pain, even if I'm still progressing on it well, I will potentially pull that movement out if I can't solve the issue. And that's just because I know from experience that if I persist in pushing a movement that is causing those types of issues, they'll just get worse. And then it'll get to the point where, like, okay, for example, like you have elbow tendonitis now that's now so bad that you can't do any pushing exercises or any pulling exercises. You can't even use the arm at all. So it's like it's not worth it to like get a couple more weeks or a month or even 2 months of progress out of that if I completely destroy something in the process. So if something begins to cause pain like that, then I will also remove it. And then one other thing that's kind of a bit more of one of those advanced concepts that maybe isn't always going to be super relevant to beginners is I can hit a point with movements where it's really no longer worth the cost of continuing to progress it, but I could keep progressing it. So what I mean by that, like, is for example, recently I had a big run with Romanian deadlifts where I pushed them pretty close to 700 pounds, and after I would do like a set of RDLs, I would need like 2 days off from the because if I didn't take that time off, I wouldn't be able to progress the next session well, even if it was completely unrelated muscles. So my next session would be like, let's say push, right? So I'd be doing some sort of chest, shoulder, tricep workout, and I couldn't progress unless I took 2 days off after RDL. Well, at that point, the benefit to cost ratio is starting to get out of whack because if I just use some other variation that I'm not as trained on, like, and it could be something really similar, like a stiff leg deadlift from the floor. Then I'll be able to go back to potentially getting that to 1 rest day or even 0 rest days. So I could keep pushing it and could take those 2 days, but at a cost to literally the rest of my program. So in a situation like that, where I'm like, okay, I could keep progressing this, but it's going to have a negative impact on all the rest of the exercises in this workout, or even in the case of something that's really systemically fatiguing like a deadlift. Now it's literally affecting the rest of my I might pull it then also, even though I could keep progressing it if I wanted to pay that cost.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's all pretty common sense. I guess as you get more advanced, you become more in tune with that. Some people might listen to that and not, or it just might not be applicable to them if they're like a beginner.
Not at all. No.
I feel like I feel like one thing that happens when you just really start to become more experienced in the gym is you just like start to I remember like something in particular where I thought I was training hard at one point, and then I was like, you know what? No, it was like a set of like leg press. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna actually try to train as hard as I fucking can. Compared it to my old logbook, and then tried this new thing, and I got like fucking 10 more reps or something ridiculous. This was way back when it was just like being more in tune with your body, like how your knees feel, how your hips feel, how sometimes you're like scared you're gonna snap shit up, but really you don't have anything to worry about. You're just fucking paranoid about it. So I think just as you get more experience, you just become more in tune with your body, I guess.
100%. I mean, especially with stuff like proximity to failure and how hard you can push yourself. I would say that like when I first started, I had I was so far away on some things from failure that it's like a joke that I thought I was close. And whereas like now, uh, there's times where like when I wake up that morning, I can tell you exactly what weight I'm gonna get for how many reps, and it will be to failure because I generally train to failure on pretty much all sets at this point. I wake up in the morning and I go, based on how I'm feeling today, this is going to be this for this, and then I'm right. And it's like not like I'm like trying to prove myself right by like maneuvering it. It's just like I literally can tell based on like the freshness of my joints, like literally how fast my brain is working when I wake up, like how much fatigue I have, and I will be right that's my performance for the day.
Shit, man, that's crazy. I did want to dive into some of the like the more like the lifestyle aspects of training. You do talk about nutrition, or you did on your YouTube channel. You had a few videos about nutrition. I didn't actually watch them, but I just know that you take it very seriously, just from what I gathered. Um, what's your eating like? Like, what's your diet like? Is that intuitive? Are you tracking calories? Like, what are you doing for that?
Boring. I eat the same thing every single day. Every single day. I will like very rarely, maybe once a month, like have a meal out or something. But for the most part, I literally eat the exact same thing every single day. So I'm not technically counting, but I am because like it's always the same. And
Mm.
then if I have a week where or 2 weeks where it's not going in the right direction, I'll make a small adjustment. And usually it's always to my white rice. So like a typical meal for me is going to be like 6 ounces of meat, a white potato, a certain amount of white rice to meet my like calorie needs, and then I have a select amount of like vegetables, nuts, and fruits that I eat to cover my micronutrient basis. But that's always the same every day too. And then I'll just adjust my white rice based on whether or not I want to like lose weight or gain weight. To give you an idea, like this last push up in body weight when I was bulking, the highest weight I got to was 272 pounds. And the amount of rice that I was eating every meal, like the cooked weight, was 600 grams. And now that I'm losing weight, that's down to 400. But everything else about the diet is exactly the same.
Holy shit! Eh? And you eat pretty clean, eh? So it's just the same clean foods over and over, or clean foods. You know what I mean? Whole foods,
Yeah,
unprocessed stuff.
it's not because I think that there's some like like there's some sort of like superiority to that. It's literally again like kind of solving those problems one thing at a time. Is when you get to the point where you're literally force feeding yourself every meal, because like make no mistake, that's where I was at when I was gaining weight. If I have some people are like, why don't you eat like a pizza? I can tell you why. Because if I eat a pizza, I won't be hungry again for 5 hours. And the problem with that is I have to get in 6 meals. Otherwise, I'm not going to get in the total amount of calories that I need. Even if that pizza is 50 to 70% more calories than one of my normal meals, the amount of fat content in there, like the cheese and the oil, is going to slow down my digestion enough of that pizza that I'll miss or have to push back one of my meals. And now I'm either staying up late to finish it or I'm not getting in my food for the day. So like I arrived at like the whole like only clean food thing because it was the only way to get my food in. And then when I'm dieting, the only way to stay full, like once you start getting to a certain level of leanness, is to ramp up things like potato and vegetables and fruits, because bread and rice is not going to cover it.
Whole food eating does solve a lot of problems,
It does, yeah.
like even from a micronutrient standpoint as well. Um, as far as like what you were doing as a natural with your diet, because like I'm someone who's currently on like a lean bulk phase. Uh, I did I did end up bulking to like 210 in the past, which was way too much for me. Right now I'm like 190, and I'm just trying to do things a little bit slower, a little bit more precise. What were you doing when you were a natural? Because you seemed like in that peak natty pick that you had, you were quite lean. But I'm wondering what the bulk process was like, because I know you started very overweight. Is that correct? From the
I
picture.
did not start very overweight. So like when I started, I was like 170 pounds maybe, and kind of like skinny fat.
Okay.
But I was one of these people that bought into like the squats and milk thing, and I literally like obesified myself.
Yeah, because I just want to clarify that wasn't someone else that I saw in the picture, but I saw a picture of you. I'm pretty
No,
sure it was you looking like borderline. You were obese in the pic.
for sure, yeah,
That
no,
was from squats and milk, eh? You're just going full dirty bulk.
yeah, like it was disgusting, man. I can't believe I did this, but like, yeah, so I would drink like a gallon of whole milk. This was like very early on. I had no idea what I was doing nutritionally yet. But I would just drink a gallon of whole milk a day on top of what I was usually eating. And then a lot of times, I mean, my diet was shit at that point. Like it was like cereal and like the McDonald's several times a week. There was times where I would just get like 40, 60 chicken nuggets from McDonald's, and I thought that was like a good meal because it had a lot of protein.
Holy.
But yeah, but I pushed my body weight at one point like 240 something, and yeah, completely super fat doing that. Like over 40% body fat for sure. And then I had to like diet it all off and like actually learn about nutrition the proper way. So it's kind of hard to say like what was I doing nutritionally at my peak natty phase, because it was an iterative process. Like all the way to the end, I was still learning about nutrition. And I would like my nutrition now is like levels above where it used to be. Levels. And that's because at the time I was mostly focused on powerlifting. So I really looked at nutrition almost as like, this is something that I got to do to make sure I stay in the right weight class. It was like not something that I gave the proper attention to, like most bodybuilders do, because they realize like, okay, well, if my nutrition's not on point, like I'm not going to be gaining as much muscle or potentially any muscle, and that's the whole point of what I'm doing here. So I'm going to put more attention into that.
Mm.
But towards the end, I did get things more figured out, and it was pretty similar to how I eat now, but like fractional in terms of the amount of food. Because like in those pictures, I was 160, 165 pounds, and for context, I'm like 5'6.5", so 170 centimeters, and 160, 165, which I think is like, I don't know, for it's pretty. What is that, like 75 kilos? And I was probably eating like 2,000 calories sometimes a day, maybe 2,500 for like maintenance. And now, when in a gaining phase, I eat like 6,500
Holy.
calories, and not like I'm not losing like a slow amount of weight. Like 5,500 calories for me is like 3 pounds a week of fat loss.
Shit, man, that's crazy.
Yeah, that,
Um,
that is something that's completely different.
that's crazy you bulked up that intensely. Like I did something I wouldn't say to that level, but I did bulk up to the point where I got quite chubby. Um, do you like how beneficial is it, or maybe I'll phrase this differently. Like, do you think that bulk was good for you, or was it just a complete way? Because obviously you took it to way too far of an extreme, but like how, like bulking in general, like how chubby or how like high should people push their body fat percentage on a bulk? Like, what do you think is kind of the cutoff? I know that might be individual, but I think like, there's a certain objective measure.
So I will answer that first question first because I think it's super important. It ended up being a complete waste of time. And the reason why is because I went so far beyond like reasonable that by the time I dieted all of that off, I lost all the strength I gained pushing up in the first place. So I was doing really well, like because that believe it or not, that whole thing happened in my first year of training. Because
Oh,
back when like you just were reading forums and people were like, if you want to be a real power lifter, you got to eat a whole pizza and drench it in olive oil. And like, if you want to get past the sticking points, you eat your way past the sticking points. And I was like, all right, if some is good, more must be better. And I don't really want to blame it on anyone else because that's just sort of my personality to take things to the extreme like that. So it's really on me because like I could have looked in the mirror at any point and been like, what are you doing? But I just kept doing it. But I think in that time, like in my first 6 months of training, I went from like 165, 170 to 190 to 195. And I took my squat from like 1 plate per side to 365 for 5. So 3.5 plates per side. And then I gained like another 50 pounds. And my squat went up to 440 for 5 from 365 for 5. But then by the time that I had dieted all the way back down to like 180, it was back to lower than 365. So I could do the same thing for my other lifts, and it was the same thing. And keep in mind that took me like a year to diet that off. So literally wasted a full year. And granted, once I did start eating at like maintenance calories again, some of that came back, but it was a complete waste of time. So as far as like how far people should push, if you're ever planning to come back down, for males, I don't see a ton of sense in going above like low 20s. So if you're going to be like a super heavyweight power lifter or strong man or whatever other goal you have that doesn't involve being aesthetically pleasing or there's no weight classes or whatever, then yeah, fine. Push up as high as high as you can go is going to be better for like absolute strength. But if you are ever planning to come back down, like you're trying to do a dreamer bulk because you think you're going to have a ton of muscle at the end of it, and you're going to do that without drugs, you are dreaming. It's going to be terrible. Nothing good is going to come out of that. Because that's the piece of the puzzle that I was missing at the time, is that all the people that were saying this crazy stuff about like drinking milk and eating pizza, they were all on tons of gear. And I was on none when I did that. And it didn't work out the same. So, yeah, I mean, low 20s, because as soon as you start getting too far above that, by the time you diet back down to something reasonable, you've been dieting for so long that you're going to be in a horrible state as far as like your mood, your energy for training, even hormonally, some things will be depressed. Of just losing what you gained. So for me, I would probably never go past the point where I would need like more than 16 to 20 weeks to diet it off. And that's a long diet.
Yeah, maybe that's a good way to think about it. It's just how long does it take to diet it off?
Yeah.
That's
like from even a competitive bodybuilding perspective, like they're going to obviously have to get much leaner than somebody who's doing this for personal aesthetics, but they don't do contest preps, even natural bodybuilders that really last more than 6 months. So if you're doing it just for aesthetics, you almost want to like shorten that range a bit anyway, because what's the point of like going through huge phases of the year if you're not even a competitor where you don't like how you look? So for me, I would say like don't go too far past the point where like you're looking in the mirror and you really don't like it, and then don't let it get to the point where you're gonna have to diet for 6+ months to get it off. There's other like little metrics that you can use that I think are kind of useful, like measure your waist at like sort of your leanest point, and then don't let your waist get more than like 3 or 4 inches above that before it's kind of like the end. Because sometimes people really do struggle with objectivity on this one, where it's like they can't look in the mirror and tell when they're like not either too fat or they think they're way fatter than they are, and like they've gained like no fat. So both of those kind of body dysmorphic tendencies tend to be a huge thing in the lifting community. So having some sort of objective metrics can really help you. But those are some of the ones that I always look at as like how long is it going to take to diet off? How far above your previous weight did you go? Like from a competitive bodybuilding standpoint, like for me, going anything more than like 50 pounds above what your projected stage weight or your real stage weight was, you're just asking to like gain way more fat than you should have. And For like smaller folks, like cut that down to like 40. Like need more than that, and it's going to be a huge diet. You're going to lose most of the strength that you gained, and you're gonna ask yourself, why did I do that?
100%, 100%. That makes sense. It's kind of I didn't take it to like I didn't take it to an extreme necessarily, but I took it to enough that I definitely suffered that, 6-month cut. Cause I hate cutting too. So it's like, I don't know, man. Like even like dieting down from like, 20% to 15% is actually, I know a lot of people say, well, like you're only dieting down to 15%, which isn't even that lean. But for me, it's like just any kind of diet. As soon as I'm in that deficit, it gets hard, especially if you're like aggressively just trying to lose weight. You don't want to dick around. So you don't want to just do a super small deficit, because then you got to diet for even longer. So you just want to get it done with. But at the same time, that's when like I do have like a pretty drastic dip in mental health as soon as I start in a deficit. Maybe I'm just a fucking baby, but
Oh, dude, like so do I, to the point where it's like noticeable, right? Like my they will know when I'm dieting. She's like, "Oh, you're dieting because you're an asshole." Like that noticeable. And people have to keep in mind with this, like people don't react the same. Like you don't have the same experience as someone else when they diet. Like people have vastly different hormonal factors going on as far as like what regulates their hunger and appetite. Like some people experience hunger much more intensely than other people, and some people get satiated much more quickly than other people. Like just a fact. So when people are like, "Oh, you're only dieting down to 15%," but okay, well, if their set point is 18 to 19%, that's a pretty big drop for them. And when they're at 15%, they're not going to actually feel that good because they're going to feel like they're in a dieted state. Whereas when you take somebody whose set point is, let's say, 14 or 15%, and they bulk to 18 to 19%, it's going to be a fast drop down to 14 to 15% where they feel nothing. And they're going to be like, why is that hard for everyone else? Well, because you're not playing with the same deck of cards that they are.
And that, do you think that like you can change your set point? Because like I started super skinny. Like in high school, I was like fucking skin and bone. And then started weightlifting and got myself up. And now I feel like my set point is kind of where I'm at like right now, which is like 190. I think I'm like 5'10" or something like that. 5'10", 5'11".
Yeah, so I think there's two elements to your set point, right? There's sort of like everything behaviorally, and then there's like the genetic aspect of it. And I think you can absolutely massively change the behavioral side of it, which is enough to have a completely set point like visually in the percentages. But I'm not super sure that you can do much about the genetic side of it. But what I can tell you is that as you gain muscle, it seems to be easier to hold like body compositions that look leaner because you get to eat more absolute amount of food. So like I have never in the past been able to like be under 15% without focusing on food all the time. Now I can do that pretty easily, but it's because like maintaining my body weight now at 14, 15% requires 5,000 calories. And before be 2,100 or whatever. And I could not do that without thinking about food 24/7. So I do think like everything can come together to sort of change how easy it is for you to stay at leaner body fat percentages. And it's like accumulation of gaining muscle, better choices with like food. Like because I also would have like when I was eating 2,100 calories, that would have been like Honey Nut Cheerios and like an apple, and like now it's like potato, meat, and stuff that's more of it. Wait, I used to not even eat vegetables, to be honest. Like I just like them. So, but now I eat a ton of vegetables, and all of these things are going to have an influence. And this is a really long-winded way of saying like, yes, I do think to some extent you can change your set point, but I also think it sort of has to do in the long run with the amount of food that you're eating, which I'm not sure that you can change that much. So by gaining muscle, you can kind of eat the amount of food that you feel good on and hold a leaner composition. But I've never really seen someone go from like outside of create like obesity cases where someone had like terrible, terrible behaviors, like drinking multiple soda, like liter sodas a day that weren't diet, that kind of thing, and then getting them to eat something sort of like reasonable. But I've never seen someone who like was a lifter making decent choices and like only felt good on like 3,500 calories get to the point where they feel good on 2,000.
Mm.
I've never seen it. They're always hungry and thinking about food. Whereas like, they get to the point where they can eat that 3,500 calories, but at a leaner composition. I've seen people totally fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's value in, we just talked about like you eat mostly whole foods just because it kind of solves some problems for you. But one thing I've been kind of figuring out about myself the last little while is focusing on food quality and like eating whole foods rather than just calories and macros has made a big difference. Like food choices, right? And I think some people like to shit on that because it's been like, calories and macros. You can eat a croissant for breakfast and be fine. And like, sure, you could, but why? It's not going to help you necessarily.
So I have like really strong opinions about that aren't heavily backed by the current literature.
I
And
don't get
I,
this is the bro science podcast, man. Let it go.
I actually really, really think it matters a lot. And I'll even go so far as to like cite cattle research on this. So they've done, and it's obvious why they won't do this research in humans, but on like cattle, they have taken them and done experiments where they will restrict certain micronutrients to see what maximizes yield. Because the whole point of like, feeding this cow is like we want to give it the cheapest food possible and still get the highest meat yield and the best meat that we can. And what the research on that has shown, and again, it's not in humans, I understand that, but if you restrict certain micronutrients, it can not only like cut muscle gain rates into fractions, it can actually completely stop muscle growth if some of those micronutrient intakes are too low. Potassium, for example. So when you're building a new pound of muscle, it's not just the dietary protein. You need certain amounts of micronutrients to assimilate all of that into the body as well. And if you have a limiter there somewhere, even if you're getting sufficient protein and there's stimulus from the training, if that micronutrient limiter is there, you will see less muscle gain than somebody who is eating a micronutrient rich diet. Now, does that mean you only ever need to eat whole foods? No, but I do think there's value in like, there's a site called Chronometer, which is very similar to MyFitnessPal.
I use that. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, so do I. Awesome food tracking app. But for those who are unaware, it shows you micronutrients. And that's a huge thing that I've done now that I didn't used to do, which just I make sure that my diet hits all the necessary micronutrients. And I felt like that's made a radical difference in sleep, my mood quality, and 100% muscle gain rates. Like I see a difference. So to me, like, yes, be a normal human from time to time, fit in your cake at your mom's birthday or whatever, right? Like eat Thanksgiving, have a Pop-Tart if you want, whatever. But like we put all this importance in tracking calories and macros and none on micros. And I think that's nonsense, especially because the very foods that are going to help you hit like the micronutrient goals you have for the day tend to keep you fuller, tend to keep you healthier. And all of these things are going to add up in the long run to like being less sick, getting more sleep, just being in a better mood. They contribute in thousands of little unseen ways to get better results in the long run, including like not binging and like not breaking your diet because you're hungry. So I'm like 100% on board with you there, to the point where I would even say like for someone who doesn't have competitive physique goals, and you may want to almost consider like in the long run shifting towards a non-counting diet that focuses on food quality over quantity, because you're probably going to be happier not having that restricted feeling like you're on a food budget all the time. And because you're making high quality choices and training hard, you're probably going to have good body composition anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
No,
I think it's underrated. I really do.
yeah, it's funny that you had to preface that by saying this goes against the current literature. Like it's almost like that's a controversial opinion, but in reality, it's like how the fuck is that controversial?
It is though. It is like especially the evidence-based lifting community. That is a very controversial opinion that we both.
Yeah. Is there anything else? First, I actually want to dive into that thing you just brought up there. What I'm doing right now is I'm just tracking my morning weight, but I'm not tracking my calories, and I'm just like focusing on food choices and almost just gauging, oh, my weekly averages are going, oh, I should eat a little bit more, a little bit more. That's almost like a way just for me mentally that I can not feel so restricted in my eating, and also be able to gauge whether or not I'm on a bulk or eating at maintenance. That can work for some people. And I am eating a lot of veggies and fruit and like a lot of I'm varying it all up and different protein sources, eggs, red meat. I feel like if you're eating whole foods and you're eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, I like how a lot of people have been shitting on vegetables and even fruits the last few years, but fruits and veggies, man, they fucking help you get those micros in.
Oh, 100%. I mean, there's a whole host of them that like you literally can't get unless you eat fruit and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're not going to get vitamin K from any kind of meat. You have to get it from leafy greens.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, I'm all fully on board with you at this point.
Is there anything else in like the science-based community that kind of bugs you, or it's kind of a pet peeve?
Like
Any kind of
literature,
sorry?
like all the training literature. I don't think it's very good. Like compared to nutrition, which is excellent. The problem with like training research is that they have to carry it out in these super unrealistic training protocols because they're trying to elucidate like mechanisms and first principles that like guide things, right? So like good example of this where they do like these volume studies and they have to like they're trying to figure out what variable matters, right? So they can only have one variable that changes. So like instead of like if we were in the real world, we are going to be like, okay, this person's going to train with 2 to 3 reps left in the tank, and this person's going to train to failure. We would never really have them doing the exact same amount of volume because that doesn't make any sense. If you've ever trained, you know that like it's easier to recover from a set where you left 3 reps in the tank as one where you left none. And we know that they're not going to provide the same results. To make them equal, you would need to do more of the easier one. But in the training literature, they have to like figure out which variable is actually causing it. So they equate volume, right? And then they do these things where they'll like test on people that are supposedly trained. But then when you read it closely, it's like we chose trained individuals for this study with the mean age of 24 and a bench press maximum of 195 pounds or 90 kilos. And you're like, that's not trained. First of all, you just described college undergrads is what you did. And that's not the same thing as somebody who's been doing this for 5 to 10 years. And that's why you literally have conclusions in the research right now like this. 2 RIR sets are exactly as hypertrophic as failure sets. The same. So there's no point in doing a 1 RIR or failure set because there isn't even a statistically significant difference between the hypertrophic outcomes. It's like, well, look who you tested it on. Like, do you think the results would hold up with people with 5 to 10 years of training experience?
Mm-hmm.
And when you get conclusions like that, it's hard to take any of it super seriously because anyone who has any practical experience would be like, I'm sorry, but a squat set, 2 reps left in the tank is not the equivalent of 1 done to failure. Like they just did a meta-analysis on this. So like I'm not even exaggerating. The current state of the literature is failure training does not provide more hypertrophy than 2 RIR sets. And it provides more fatigue. So never train to failure. I mean, look, you want to make an argument that you shouldn't train to failure all the time? 100%. Like periodization works. It's important. But when you try to pass stuff like that in there, you then have to call into question the whole of the literature, right? And then there's other stuff like the Schoenfeld volume studies where they had people doing, they couldn't find the upper limit for volume. And they were having people do this. This was the protocol. Single leg press to failure on 90 seconds rest. and they got upwards of 40 and 50 sets per week without finding an upper limit on the amount of sets that cause the most hypertrophy. I would literally die trying to do 20 leg press sets to fit. I mean, you'd be doing the empty sled with no weight on it by like the set, and I would be sore for 3 weeks or get hurt before I could even finish that amount of volume. So, and again, the reason why that's happening is because they're taking trained individuals who don't know how to actually push to failure and then making them do repeat sets of failure on 90 seconds rest, which isn't enough time to recuperate for another proper set. So they're doing one failure set plus a bunch of junk volume. And then conclusions from that and go, well, volume is the main driver of hypertrophy. Let's squeeze in as much volume as we can recover from. Well, in reality, when you look at other studies that say take a 3-minute rest period, they have no problem finding the upper limit. And it's just like that bugs me a lot, where people will take, it's like they did some training protocol, like forget all the rest of the problems. They did some training protocol that nobody would ever do. Like, so what are you can't directly apply any of it. Like, you're never going to go in and do 30 sets of leg press to failure ever for any reason. And then people try to draw these overarching conclusions and make other people seem like they're dumb for going against it. And that's what really bothers me. Like, no, some of these top pro bodybuilders who do a lot of failure training are not necessarily idiots. It's just that the literature doesn't match up with reality yet.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I honestly kind of stopped paying attention to it. I just follow people that are bigger and stronger than me and just try to like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like, so where would you, so say you're a natural lifter, because I wanted to talk about like specifically if you're a natural dude, you plan on staying natural for the rest of your life, or at least for now. Do you think, like, we kind of talked about this at the beginning of the podcast, saying there's some people that are enhanced, they can kind of train however they want and they're going to get results. And like it is fair to say, as a natural lifter like me, I could train that way and not see those results.
Yeah.
Totally fair. So what would you say to someone in my position? Like, what should I be looking for? Should I be, cause like for me, it's like, I still follow a lot of, like, I follow Dr. Mike and I follow some of these like enhanced lifters and listen to their stuff. And like, I'm going to like watch your content and still take it very serious, but there's some natural or enhanced lifters that I won't take seriously, just kind of based on maybe their attitude or just the way they train. I kind of tell it's bullshit. But do you think, like, as a natural lifter, you should like take, enhanced lifters advice with a grain of salt, or like, how should you go about that? Is that being too elitist or like a purist?
So I think, like, as a general rule of thumb, it's fine to take advanced lifters advice with a grain of salt, especially until you're at the point where you're able to quickly discern like training advice that's complete nonsense. So, like, I mean, I hate to call anybody out by name, but like, if I go and watch the way that Flex Wheeler used to train, and he's one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. Like, a lot of people would even say he's got like the most aesthetic physique ever. But if you watch the way he trained, it's like 3-hour workouts where every single set is 5 to even 10 reps short of failure, going for the pump. No natural person will ever get results from that. And you know what? No enhanced person will ever get results from that unless they're in the middle of a cycle. So the biggest thing for me, like, that should be a red flag for like not listening to an enhanced person, is like, if they are espousing training protocols that don't make sense at all. Like, so after I just got done ragging on the literature, but like, one thing that I don't like the state of the training literature for, like, specifics, like how to actually train, the nitty gritty. But if we're talking about figuring out principles, we know that training needs to, like, the most fundamental thing, your training needs to be hard. Like, it needs to be not necessarily to failure. Most of your sets need to be close to failure or doing anything. And then, from there, and this sort of goes for natural people as well, is does this line up with like my experience and listening to other bigger and stronger people with what actually makes the difference in training. And I'm immediately skeptical of basically like anybody that talks about how you don't need to worry that much about progressive overload, like focus on the pump. Like I have red flags like that where I'm just like, okay, you probably are full of shit. And it's fair to say, in my experience, that there's a much higher percentage of like really, really good enhanced bodybuilders that are just there on genetics and drugs and the whole lifestyle. Because that's the other thing that people need to understand is like you're on enough drugs and you do eat the food. And we're talking, it's a lot of food. It's like they're eating the 6,000 to 7,000 calories a day of clean food. Because most of these guys that have nonsense training programs, they do everything else correct as far as like enhanced bodybuilding goes. So they're eating the clean food. They're living the lifestyle. They're taking the drugs. They're pushing their body weight up to 270, 280, 300 in the off season. If you do that, you can do anything in the gym. Like just go flail around a little bit, and it's proven that you'll get something out of it. Like you could probably not lift and do like all the rest of the aspects of the lifestyle and get some pretty something to happen. Like you get fat and stuff by pushing up that high, but like you probably gain a ton of muscle too. So I guess this is kind of, again, my specialty, but a long-winded way of saying, like, you got to understand the basic principles of, like, what makes training work. It's got to be hard. It's got to be progressive over time. And another thing, though, is that, honestly, like, most enhanced lifters that know what they're talking about have spent a significant amount of time naturally. I would be super skeptical of somebody that basically became enhanced right away.
Mm-hmm.
And most enhanced lifters will have a lot of experience also working with naturals. And that's the other thing is like, if the training program that they're doing, quote unquote, doesn't work for naturals, it doesn't work at all. Because that's sort of the big thing that confuses people is because enhanced lifters can get away with absolute nonsense in the middle of a training cycle. People think there's a different way to train for enhanced versus natural, but it's just really that enhanced lifters can literally do training that doesn't work and just take enough drugs to cover that up. So to me, honestly, good training is just good training. But the litmus test for that is the training should work when you're natural. The training should work when you're on TRT doses if you're an enhanced bodybuilder. If your training only produces progress when you're on, we'll do the funny internet thing, when you're on a bunch of tren, you have a training program that doesn't work. And so to me, that's the real divide is like, if your training program doesn't work for naturals, your training program just doesn't work. Because what you're saying is that your training program doesn't work with human physiology. It only works when you throw 3 grams of gear in there.
No, that's great. We'll wrap this thing up right away. I want to just ask you one more question or dive into one more topic here. You were talking about, you'd be skeptical of people who are enhanced and they became enhanced right away. So they train for like 6 months. So my genetics are shit, so I'm going to go on gear. I think that is happening right now. I think that honestly, like a bunch of kids are hopping on gear way too fucking early. You can you see it on TikTok, people openly talking about drugs at like fucking, you have like 16, like my little brother has a friend who's like 16 years old or something like that. And he's trying to hop on gear. It's like, what the fuck are you doing, man? It's like, max out your genetic potential first. And, at least, like, I'm not even telling people to do it. Like I'm never going to do it. It's not something I'm interested in, but like, do you think that there's like this black pilling when it comes to like genetics? And like, first off, how important are genetics? How much should we focus on that? And why there's people that will train for like 2 years and think their genetics are shit and then hop on something.
Oh man, that is a huge like can of worms. So first of all, I totally agree with you because right now we have this huge issue with like lifting has gone mainstream to a large degree, and it was not even like 10 years ago. But now you have like frat bros. I'm really not trying to be like derogatory, but they're like frat bros who are like conventionally attractive, right? They post like other sorority girls that are their girlfriend, and that's who the 17, 16-year-old kids want to be now. They want to be the 23-year-old dude with a 50,000, 100,000 person following and a hot girlfriend. Like, they don't want to be Arnold. They don't want to be like a top natural bodybuilder or whatever. They like want to be a hot frat guy. And they don't give a shit. There's no like deeper meaning to any of this for them. They want the clout on TikTok as soon as possible. And it's just like, it's like a means to an end, like buying designer jeans for someone else or something. And so, yeah, it's this horrible problem where the culture of lifting is like really changing from something that's kind of hardcore and underground to like, there's a huge contingent now that's like, they actually want to be like hot. The best way I could put it. Like, they want to be hot. They want to be attractive. And it's not about like building strength, character, even muscle. It's like, oh, now to be hot, you have to have muscles. And these that are gonna like up on Tran at 17, which is like horrible. Now, as far as like how much do genetics matter, they both don't matter at all, and they're everything at the same time. So like, if we're talking about elite levels of competition, if you don't also have elite genetics, you can't compete. Like, that much is obvious, right? Like, okay, you want to go to the NBA, and you're not, usually well over 6 feet tall, you're fucked. Okay, like, you're fucked. Like, it's not gonna happen for you. At the same time, unless you have horrible genetics, like on the other side of this, like either like legitimate health problems, some sort of disorder, or just truly like super, super bad genetics, that probably has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on how good you could be at like the local YMCA at basketball, right? Even if you're 5'6", you could very easily, most of the time, be the best player on the court at like your local YMCA. And guess what? Real life has a lot more in common with the local YMCA as far as like physique standards than it does being in the NBA. And that's where people get super mixed up. Like, for most people, like, your genetics are not a factor at all because you're not trying to become Mr. Olympia, natural or enhanced. Like, you just want to look good by your own standards or get to a level of strength that's like a goal for you. And for that, like within like the first standard deviation or so, it doesn't matter at all. Like, it's literally, it's going to come down to your process. How bad do you want it? Are you able to work on, like, we had a whole segment where we're talking about flow states and the psychology of this and getting better and better at that over time. It's going to come down to, can you do that? Can you stick to a diet? Can you be consistent with your training program for 10 years? Will you learn the meaning of hard work and keep relearning it? I thought I worked hard from like year one. And every year I realized, oh, there's a work that I didn't understand. So that stuff is what's going to be the difference maker between all of us who are like in that first standard deviation of genetics, which, if it's a bell curve, which is probably not a perfect bell curve, that's 68% of people, 70% right there, right? That we are pretty much just average, all of us. And the separator for all of us in that 70% range, 35 below, 35 above, is not your genetics. And a lot of it is you need to learn how to do this stuff and get good at it, because there's a skill component that people who have been doing this for 2 years don't have. Like, imagine this in any other context, and it gets so silly, right? Like someone learning an instrument, or like learning to play chess, and after 2 years of substandard effort, probably on without like a teacher or a coach, like, I learned to play the piano from YouTube videos. Like, you don't have a music teacher. You're like, my genetics for piano suck. So I'm an advanced piano player now. Like, you don't even know what you don't know yet. You haven't even learned what works for you yet. I probably figured out like what makes me have the best progress, like in like years 6, 7, and 8 of being natural. And I'm not even convinced that like if I would have stayed natural for another 10 years, that I wouldn't have kept figuring it out even more. So it's like my progress, if like I was to like visualize it, I made a huge amount of progress like when I was a beginner. Then it really dropped off, and I made kind of crappy progress as like an early, middle, intermediate. And then when I sort of figured out what worked again, it took off again. Not quite at the level of when I was a complete beginner, but way more than what I made. Like I made more progress in years 6, 7, and 8 than like 2, 3, 4, 5 easily. Like I probably made more progress in year 6 than 2, 3, 4, 5 combined. And that's because it took a long time, not only for me to learn some of this stuff, but for other things. One, I was no longer a young 20-something, like into partying all the time. I got my financial situation in order, and I had like a real person, big person job, and I could afford like food and my own like place without roommates and a crazy hectic schedule all the time. So these things together, and like for some 20-year-old who doesn't even like know who they are yet, like as a person, to be like, oh, I know everything about training, and my genetics suck. It's like, come on. You don't even know yet. Like I actually think it's totally possible in your first 2 years to be doing things so wrong that you could cover up actual good genetics and get bad results. Especially with information that's out there right now, like how bad some of it is, like with the TikTok stuff, like iliac pull downs, and like you could have actually good genetics and just do so much silly stuff that you get minimal results. I've seen that my whole life. Like, even in like best example, like high school football. Okay, there's some super gifted kids in those. And is it always those super gifted kids that end up being like the strongest at the end of high school? No, because there's some kids that work way harder and stick to it more. Now, some of the super gifted kids are among that group, and they become like really special. But it's not always like super gifted people, because a lot of them, they don't work hard. They don't even know how yet. And after 2 years of training, if you think you know how to work hard, you're just wrong. Like, go ask any adult who's done something for 10 years. I don't even care what it is, an instrument, a martial art, business, law, medical field, and ask them at year 2, did you have any idea what you're doing compared to now? So I really don't think that unless your goal is to be super elite, or you have like a medical problem, like it's like you have like you need TRT, you have I don't know, multiple sclerosis or something that's like legitimately impacting your ability to do this at the level of like a healthy person. You don't even need to worry about your genetics. Like who cares? Yes, there's going to be freaks, and they're going to be posted on TikTok and Instagram, because like now we have like almost like this recruiting pipeline to find these people. But like for the average person that like is working towards high achievement inside the normal, like good to okay to slightly bad genetic range, what's going to determine who gets the furthest is not like this guy was in the 58th percentile and this guy was in the 41st percentile. And, 58th percentile genetics are just so much better than 41st percentile genetics that he just said no chance. No fucking way. It's going to come down to who works hard, who wants it the most, who learns the most. Those are going to be the things that matter. So ultimately, like, I think genetics are an interesting, fun topic, but it's really not something that you ever focus on at all, like on a practical day to day, because you can't change it. They are what they are. And like, again, unless you have these aspirations to be one of the best in the world, which you'll know if you can do that pretty quickly, who cares? Like it's not going to be the difference between you getting your, a 3-plate bench. It's you want to bench 600? Yes. Okay. Yes. Easily genetics. Maybe even stuff like, in the 405 to 500 range, you're going to need something special to get to that. But we're talking about like, you want to bench press 3 plates as a lifetime achievement, maybe 3.5. That's going to come down to how bad you want it. You can make that happen if you're in that normal range, and replace bench press with whatever, like FFMI, fat free mass index, with a certain physique. You can't look like other people because they have their own muscle attachments and structure that makes everyone unique. But you can get to something so much more impressive than you think, completely naturally. I don't think I matched my natural physique. I'm sure I didn't, because I got that physique from powerlifting training, and powerlifting training is, at the end of the day, not optimal for building muscle. So that if I can do that for 8 years and be like 100% confident that I didn't get the most out of it, come on. If you've been doing this for 2, you have no idea yet. Anyway, I mean,
Sure. No, that was great, man. That was awesome. No, it's a good place to wrap this up. If you want to let people know where they can find you, if you have anything that you want people to be pointed towards, let me know.
yeah, if you guys on Instagram, my Instagram handle is just at Izzy Narvaez, which is just I mean that's pretty much the only way to get in contact with me these days, because I don't do any other social media platforms.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, likewise. It was a fun conversation. Thanks, man.